Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another episode of Friday Night Magic, where this week I decided just like an hour ago to go completely stupid and silly and made a +1/+1 counter deck. Doesn't have all the pieces because I'm unlocking feverishly, but it has some pretty critical ones so far. So let's go into it. Yeah, it was just I wonder if this would work. It'd be kind of silly if it did. So, right, +1/+1 counters. First up, 3 copies of Obsessive Skinner for 2 mana. This is mono green, so there's that. So when it comes into the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature, and Delirium, which is probably not going to come up much in this deck. That's the only reason they're in here over a couple others, but if it comes up, it comes up. If there's 4 more card types among cards in the graveyard, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature on your opponent's upkeep. Next up, 3 copies of Duskwatch Recruiter to fish for more. So 2 for 2/2, and for 3 mana, you can look at the top 3 cards of your library, reveal a creature card from among them, put it into your hand, the rest on the bottom. If no spells were cast during a turn by any player, then you flip it to Crown Horde, Howler, which becomes a 3/3 werewolf, which creature spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. And if any player casts 2 spells during a turn, it flips back. So it makes all this stuff cheaper, which is kind of the point to get to the upper end. We'll get there. 3 copies of Lambhole Pacifist with a +1/+1 counter deck. Its downside, where it can't attack unless a creature with power 4 or greater also attacks, or you control, sorry. I always think also attacks. But anyways, yeah, you just slap a +1/+1 counter on. If they don't cast a spell, all the better. But anyway it goes, we do the same thing for flipping, and it turns into a 4/4 on its own. So, nice blocker until we get the 1 counter. It's not going to block, or probably not often. Next up, Kujar Seed Sculptor, a 1/2 for 2, and when it enters the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. A nice note, it turns into a 2/3 on its own, which is quite nice for a 2-drop. So if you don't have anything to really tie with it, it becomes a body that can hold its own in the early game anyway. 1 copy of Timberland Guide, simply because the other 3 didn't make the cut. And it's a 1/1 for 2 that puts a +1/+1 counter on target creature. 2 copies of Nature's Way, because that's all I have, so yeah. And it's 2 mana sorcery. Target creature you control gains vigilance and trample until end of turn, deals damage equal to its power to target creature you don't control. So it gives the option for trample for when we get those counters up, and when we're adding counters, we should be able to deal with most things that are on the board very easily, or relatively easy. So since the balance is that I don't have that many, and I want heavy creature removal, I'm going to also have the 4 copies of Rabbit Bite in here. Obviously, you can rebalance it for your own deck as you please. And this has target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to target creature you don't control. A little bit of a downside compared to Nature's Way. Obviously, you can see that, and why I'd say switch them out if you have the Nature's Ways. 1 copy of Nissa, simply because she's Nissa. So when she enters the battlefield, you can search your library for a forest card, put it in your hand, and when a land enters the battlefield under your control, if you control 7 or more lands, you flip her into Nissa Sage Animist, and she has card draw, elemental, and ultimate that wins. Simple enough. I'm going to simplify her. 2 copies of Tireless Tracker, obviously only 2, but anyway. So it's 3/2 for 3, and whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, investigate to get a clue, and whenever you sacrifice a clue, put a +1/+1 counter on Tireless Tracker. So if you manage to get Tireless Tracker out and your opponent doesn't manage to deal with it immediately, start pumping the crap out of it. Drop your lands, drop your clues, and drop your +1/+1 counters, because that thing's going to go coast to coast. 3 copies of Reclamation Sage, because annoying flying 3/3s suck. Anyway. Moving on, 2 copies of Shrill Howler. I only have 2, but we'll see if it's useful. So it's a 3/1 for 3, and creature with powers less than Shrill Howler's power cannot block it, and you can transform it. Obviously, you can see where the +1/+1 counters come in, and less can block this over time if it's not dealt with. Same with it gets out of hand, obviously. And if you transform it, it has the same ability. It becomes a 3/5, so its butt gets big. And whenever it deals combat damage to a player at this point, put a 3/2 colorless Eldrazi horror creature token onto the battlefield. So we want to go wide. As you can see, we're running 26 creatures, so we're going very creature heavy. Next up, Retreat to Kazandu, an enchantment for 3, and whenever a land enters the battlefield you control, you can put a +1/+1 counter on a creature or gain 2 life. Mostly we'll be dealing with +1/+1 counters to make our board state pretty ridiculous. But you never know what'll come up, so it's a thing. And you can see where these two get seriously out of control if you have a retreat and plenty of land and all the support. Next up, 2 copies of Pulse Marasa, because you never know what you might need. If it's anywhere from just 1 +1/+1 counter to the ability to, well, get some good stuff, it's there. And it also gains 6 life. So instant for 3, return target creature or land card from your graveyard, from a graveyard, I'm sorry. You can use it on your opponent's graveyard, and you have to if you have nothing to target. And it goes to its owner's hand, but you still gain 6 life regardless of your target. 1 copy of Armorcraft Judge. I'm thinking that as soon as I get more, this thing, it will be probably more of a mainstay. So it's a 3/3 for 4, and when Armorcraft Judge enters the battlefield, draw a card for each creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it. So it can get you back into the game as soon as you spew out all this garbage in the early game and give you your end game steam. So as you can see, it'll and for a 4-drop, yeah, that's pretty decent. Draw you a bunch of cards, and yeah, pretty good. Next up, Cultivator of Blades, 5 mana for a 1/1 with Fabricate 2. And whenever Cultivator of Blades attacks, you may have other attacking creatures get +X/+X till end of turn, where X is its power. So you can get counters on it like crazy and just boost up all those little 1/1s to start swinging for some hefty damage. That's what that's for, yeah. And the last non-land card, Decimator of Provinces. So it's 10 mana normally, and with the emerge of 9, you can get it out. So, you know, you're probably getting rid of one of your 2-drops or something like that. So you're probably going for 7, unless something else comes up, but it's likely going to be 7 cast, and you'll have a big wide board by that time if nothing's sweeped it. Hey, it's a fun deck. It's not dealing with sweepers. It's intended to be fun. So when you cast Decimator of Provinces, creatures control get +2/+2 and gain trample until the end of turn. It also has trample and haste and is a 7/7. So, you know, you got 3 options at least to really boost up the whole team for your kind of finisher. So here's your finishers, basically. Next up, 20 Forests, 2 Westfell Abbeys since we go wide. And if we don't see something that's necessarily going to control the board like bounce, then it's going straight for face if we need to. And 2 copies of Rogue's Passage if we need to get something through that just refuses. And they have a nice board. So that's the deck, and hope you enjoyed the deck tech and have some options that you think might fit in here. Go ahead and let me know what you think might fit in. As I said before, I don't have all the cards, but you never know what could fit in here. Obviously, Verdurous Gearhulk, if I had it, it'd be in here, but I don't, so it's not. So we're going with that, and I'll see you in the gameplay. Link will be down in the comments. I'll leave one there for you, and I'll see you in the gameplay. Bye-bye.